Hi, my name is Ella Perry, and I'm going to be presenting my understanding of Hamilton that I've developed through the past couple of weeks. Okay, so my first slide just kind of goes into detail about the background of Hamilton, when it was written, how it was written. So the author is Lin-Manuel Miranda. The inspiration began in 2009 when Miranda was asked to participate in a play about the American experience. So he actually received a phone call from the White House, and he was very honored that he could be a part of that. And so this musical play, like, inspired him because it was about the early American experience, and he just kind of sat on that for a while and thought more deeply about it. And this what gave him the idea of Hamilton. He later went on to write the musical, and it was performed on August 6th, 2015 on Broadway, and he was actually the star of Hamilton. So the background of what really like inspired besides this was he was on a trip with his wife at the time, and they were sitting in the pool, and he was talking about, like, oh, it would be so cool if I wrote something about this, or I was able to just express this in a musical. And so they were talking back and forth and came up with this idea of Hamilton. And so Miranda saw Hamilton. um, he saw Hamilton's resent relentlessness and brilliance, and stubbornness through his own lens, because he too came from an immigrant family, and he felt like his upbringing kind of raised him not the same way, but he had the same lens as Hamilton did, because he was passionate and ambitious in what he loved, such as music. He's a composer, singer, a writer, and obviously a star. So he just was really inspired by Hamilton's ambition. um, he was so fascinated with his imperfection and the truth behind his story that he really just wanted to capture it, and let everyone see, like, people aren't like perfect. Like, great people are still not perfect. And so the next slide is about Alexander Hamilton. This is a picture of him. He was born out of wedlock, so his mother did cheat on his father with another man, and she was thrown into jail for adultery, and her husband actually ran off with all of their money. So his mother died 2 years later, so he became an orphan. And this is when, like, his upbringing really truly affected him, because he was an orphan, and he was a it says it in the musical, he was a bastard son, and back in those days, like, that was just really looked down upon. So when he got older, he was involved in the Revolutionary War, and then he married Elizabeth, which is Eliza in the musical, and they did have 8 children together. He was born in the Caribbean, to also parents who came from England, or may have not been England, but he was not born in America. Elizabeth came from a wealthy family, unlike Alexander, so this was a little different because he wasn't like her. He was tough, and he was ambitious, and he wanted to make a name out of himself. And she came from old money, and she was very strong and a wonderful woman. She was very loyal to him and pushed him to achieve all of his dreams, and always stood by his side. And the musical highlights the marriage very well in the beginning, especially in the song. I think it is This Could Be Enough. It really highlights their marriage and how she's really pushing him to do better and just to achieve his goals. So this is my thesis. Hamilton is a man of the people due to his imperfect nature and upbringing. So I'll dive a little bit deeper into that, and how the musical highlights that. But he really was a man of the people. He came from nothing and made a name out of himself. So in the beginning of the musical, he made friends with really important figures on the battlefield. This is where he first met General Washington, which aided him in the future. He discovered his skills for writing and tactics, which he used in the war. So he's great on the battlefield, but behind the scenes, they used his knowledge and his writing skills to plan out tactics they would use in the war against the British, and this ultimately led them to victory. In the song The Right Hand Man, so this is about Alexander Hamilton becoming Washington's right hand man. So he really didn't have a choice. Washington was just like, you're going to be my right hand man. Like, I need you. Um, which was really interesting because Washington and Hamilton never truly became good friends. They worked so close together in close quarters and together for a long time, but they never really got along like friends would. But in the song The Right Hand Man, the people are saying like to each other, rise up, here comes the general and his right hand man talking about Hamilton. So they like addressed him as his right hand man and like honored him as it. And I thought that was pretty powerful. And what did Hamilton accomplish? After the Revolutionary War, he became first Secretary and Treasurer of the United States, which was huge because they had just won the war. The United States, it's this new country, this new world, and he was partially in charge of it. And he did come up with he invented came up with the idea of the first national bank, which we still use today, which is honestly amazing. The impact that he has on today's world is just really inspiring. He wrote the US Constitution and wrote many different Federalist papers. And so in the song Nonstop, this is when he's talking to Burr. And they're going back and forth talking about the Constitution. And it says a series of essays anonymously published defending the document to the public. And then Burr's like, no one will read it. Hamilton says, I disagree. Burr answers, and if it fails, Burr, that's why we need the Constitutions. We need it. The Constitution's a mess, so it needs amendments. It's full of contradictions, so is independence. We have to start somewhere. So he's revising the Constitution, and this is where the amendments and the Bill of Rights come from. He saw an issue with it, and he's like, we need to fix it, because he really wanted this new world to be built on equality and liberty and independence, true independence, nothing holding you back. So his additions to it is what changed the United States. Along with his accomplishments, he was imperfect. And this goes back to my thesis. This is why he's a man of the people, is because he made such an impact on everyone and inspired everyone around him. His ambition was just so powerful, and it still is. These songs really inspire people today, but no one's perfect. Hamilton did cheat on his wife and got called out by his friend Burr. This bothered me a lot because his wife was so incredibly loyal to him. But again, he had insecurities. He's imperfect. This is what his mother did too. So Burr and Alexander ended up dueling, and Burr did kill Alexander Hamilton. So in the song Obedient Servant, it says Burr's talking, he was writing a letter to Hamilton, and Burr states, answer for the accusations I lay at your feet, or prepare to bleed, good man. So that is when he was preparing to duel, and Burr was telling him, come out and be truthful about your mistakes, about cheating on your wife. And Hamilton didn't want to admit it, but he knew he was imperfect too. And I think his pride and his ambition was his greatest strength, but also his not strongest, but his greatest weakness, because sometimes it would blind him and he would do things like this, and the women were irresistible to him because he was lonely. But I think his pride just really took advantage of him. But here are all my references, and that is my understanding on Hamilton.